I was away from the office last week with some people who were studying at something called the Art of Transitional Ministry. This used to be called Interim Pastor Training, but we've changed the title of it a little bit because we often have people come to the week of education who don't really want to be interim pastors, but they're interested in thinking about all of the transitions that we all face in the church and thinking about new ways of bringing about change in the church. So I thought I would share a little bit of what we often teach at those weeks when we are away to do that. One of the authors that we often refer to is John Cotter. You may have heard of him. He's written lots of books about change. He's kind of made it into a little industry, I think. And he has 8 steps that need to go on when we're going to affect a change. So I wrote them up here on the board in the conference room here so that you could see them. The first thing he said that we have to do is increase urgency. And I thought as I talk about these 8 steps today, I would tell you as I go a little story about a church that I served one time. I was the, I think, stated supply pastor at the Presbyterian Church in Deep River, Iowa. Well, it's actually not only a Presbyterian church, it's Presbyterian and United Methodist. The 2 churches had merged before I got there. When I arrived at Deep River, they had, about 100 members in a town of about 300 people. And I noticed very quickly that Sunday school was in a shambles. They had Sunday school before worship, and I would get there driving 25 miles from where I lived to arrive, and I noticed that sometimes the kids would arrive before the teachers, that the teachers were ill-prepared, that it was different kids every week. It just wasn't going very well on Sunday. So I began to talk with them about what the purpose of Christian education was and to point out to them what a shambles the Sunday school program was in. We began to kind of increase the sense of urgency there about what we needed to be doing in Christian education. Cotter's second step is that you need to build a guiding team. So once people say, oh yeah, we do need to change this, whatever this is, then you need to find a team of people who can affect that change, who can bring it about with you. Well, in that place, it was part of their board. Again, it was a Methodist and Presbyterian church. It wasn't called a session. They're part of their board. There also was a woman in that town, the only other person in that church who had gone to college besides me, who had been a teacher all her life. And she was one of those women in her small town who got things done. If you wanted anything done, you talked to Virginia Pierce, and it would be done as quickly as possible. So we got Virginia on our team as well. We built a guiding team. And then we had to get the vision right. Well, I had the good fortune of having worked at a much larger church for a while that had what was then called a youth club, now called a Logos program, a midweek program, kind of making it feel like going to camp every week, and I knew how to run that kind of program. So we began to create a vision for doing that in this much different setting, this small town, and so we began to get the vision right about how we would carry out our Christian education program. We then began to communicate about how this would happen. We got some help from other places. The big church where I had worked before even donated some money to help us get this program started. So we really communicated about how we would do it. Then his 5th step, Cotter's 5th step, is to empower action. That is to begin to get it done. And so we laid out a way that we would do this. We eventually ended up with kids from 3 years old through high school who would come on Wednesday evenings. We kind of cycled the preschoolers through first, and then the elementary kids, and then the high school kids would come in the evening. One of the ways that we empowered the action was to say we were only going to do this for 6 months at a time. Again, this was a church of 100 people, and we basically ended up with every kid in a 5-mile radius around that town. We had a lot of kids in this program. We could not have sustained it throughout 12 months, but we could do it for 6 months at a time. So we empowered action and we created short-term wins. Through the auspices of Virginia, remember the woman who could get things done, we got it set up so that the school buses pulled up in front of the church building and dropped the kids off there. That made it very easy for them to come after school, to come to our church for Christian education. We created some short-term wins. And then his 7th step is that you can't let up. Don't let up, because people will get tired. People will say, I can't do this anymore. People will say, let's just go back to the way it used to be. But you have to keep going. And between Virginia and me, we kept that program going. And then you need to make the change stick. After that first 6 months was over, people were saying, well, I don't know, it went pretty well, but do you think we can do it again? Yes, we can. And so we planned for 6 months about how to keep it going and how to make it even better. So those are Kotter's 8 steps to getting change done. They're not easy. They don't always go exactly in order. Sometimes you have to circle back and get a new guiding team, or circle back and make sure that you've got the vision right. But those are his 8 steps. And in this book, which is one of the later books that he wrote, The Heart of Change, he reminds us as well that what we have to do is help people see what we need to do by telling really good stories about our vision and about where we're going. We have to help them feel that a change is necessary. We don't give them statistics, we don't give them budgets, we don't give them the facts only. We also need to help them feel emotionally how this change will affect us, and that is often what brings about change. So I hope as you are coming to the end of your program year in your congregations this year, and as you begin to gear up for whatever you're doing this summer and for the fall, that you will begin to think about how can we go through the steps that will bring about the change that we know needs to happen, so that we can continue to bring the good news of hope in Jesus Christ to all of those whom we meet.